Hello, my name's Amanda Moore, and I thank you for inviting me today to discuss fracking. While some of you may be ready to discuss this issue in a lot of detail, others might be wondering, what is this funny word? I'm here today to hopefully shed some new light on this issue and discuss a little bit about how it's communicated in our society. Before getting started, I would like to make an important note. Fracking is a highly debated issue, meaning there's going to be a lot of highly biased sources out there. Let's use a quick example about documentaries. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary definition of a documentary is a film or a TV show that presents facts about people or events. So when we think about a documentary, we think we're receiving the whole story because we're receiving the facts about the story. However, sometimes this isn't true. Typically, documentaries have a specific argument, and sometimes they can present facts that are only in favor of that argument. Here's an example of two documentaries that do just that regarding fracking. Gasland is a documentary that argues against fracking, whereas Frack Nation is a documentary that argues for fracking. Both films present facts only in favor of their specific arguments, which makes it hard for us to decipher what the actual true story is and how we feel about the specific story. The important takeaway here is to understand this fact and be conscious of it as we go through the information. So, today I'm not going to tell you whether fracking is right or wrong for you. I think you need to make that determination yourself. My purpose today is to present both sides of the story, the risks and the benefits. Eventually, towards the end, I will share my point of view on the issue, but my hope is that you use the facts to eventually arrive at your opinion on this matter. So let's get started. What is fracking? Hydraulic fracturing is another name for fracking. It's commonly referred to as fracking. It's a method of pumping fracking fluid, or a combination of chemicals, water, and sand, down into a well deep into the shale reservoirs deep under the ground. The pressure from this causes the rock to crack, and the natural gas is able to escape up through the well. After the fracturing process, the leftover fracturing fluid, or wastewater, must be disposed of safely because it has those harmful chemicals in it. Here's a brief overview of the history of fracking. This is not a new technology despite common belief. The media has recently been reporting on this issue more frequently because of the more common usage within the last 10 to 20 years. However, in 1821, there was a commercial shale gas extraction in the United States. In 1976, the United States Department of Energy began the Eastern Gas Shales Project, which was a project intended to further our understanding of the potential for shale gas extraction and to refine the production process of the Eastern gas shales. In 1981, Mitchell Energy and Development Corporation produced natural gas from Barnett Shale. After the success of this company, other companies began to produce shale gas as well, leading us to 2010, where 4.9 trillion cubic feet of shale gas production was taking place. Now that we have a brief background, let's touch on some of the different risks and benefits. Some of the main risks are harmful environmental effects, seismic activity, and a lack of research on this field, especially in the long term. So, what are the different environmental effects? Let's begin with water. With this process, as I mentioned, there's the wastewater with this process, at the end, there's the wastewater that must be disposed of properly. If it's not disposed of properly, or if there's leakage, this can contaminate our drinking water, our groundwater. There was a study done in Ohio over 20 years that estimated only a 0.1% incident rate of groundwater contamination, but this is definitely a potential risk. Another consideration with water is the supply of water that it takes to perform this process of producing shale gas. in areas where there's not an abundant supply of water and we perform this activity, it could result in water stress, which we know is not sustainable. Air contamination is also a serious environmental risk of this process. In a study performed by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, performed over several weeks, they collected air samples over different shale gas wells in Utah and discovered that 6 to 12% of the natural gas from the shale could have been escaping into the atmosphere. Now, although these percentages may seem low, it's important to consider that these wells are near residential areas. And we don't necessarily understand the long-term effects of these different risks to our environment. Seismic activity is another potential risk of this high amount of fracturing that's going on. The U.S. Geological Survey published literature claiming that there has been a 7-fold increase in central United States since 2008, and they believe this has to do with the boom in the production of shale gas by fracking. It's not just this initial drilling into the ground. It's also the disposal of the wastewater that has been shown to result in the strong earthquakes. In Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, near the airport, they were injecting wastewater into the ground. And there were more than 180 earthquakes between 2008 and 2009 that stopped immediately once the injection of the wastewater stopped. As I mentioned, there's a lack of research on the long-term effects specifically of the environmental and health risks of fracking. In an annual environmental review, Jackson et al. Claims that there is a lack of research, and they outline 5 different ways that we can improve our research on this issue. We need to understand the stresses caused by fracking. We need to improve our well failure statistics. And one of the ways we can do this is by obtaining systematic randomized testing of wells. We also need to be able to quantify gas emissions during drilling and operations. And we need a prediction method for long-term and water contamination so that we don't have to wait 50 years to find out the 50-year effect. Improving our research knowledge will result in safer production of shale gas and will allow us to have a better understanding of the risks to our environment. Now that we've covered some of the main risks around fracking, let's talk about some of the benefits. There is a large domestic supply of shale gas, especially in the United States. It is a more cost-effective method of energy supply, and it can be better for our environment. Let's touch on the large domestic supply. Here's a visual representation estimated by the United States Energy Information Administration of the shale gas reserves, or potential for the reservoirs, so the potential for production of shale gas. As you can see, the United States has a large supply of this. In fact, we have over 1,000 trillion cubic feet of potential shale gas resources. This not only allows us to have control over our supply of energy, it also creates jobs for people in the United States. The large supply helps to factor into a cheaper energy source, but shale gas production is actually 50 to 66% cheaper in addition than conventional gas wells. So this cheap production of gas results in a cheaper gas, which ultimately leads to a cheap electricity source for consumers. In a journal article written about the influence of shale gas on U.S. energy and environmental policy, Jacoby et al. Claims that without shale gas development, by the year of 2050, our natural gas prices would be 2.5 times higher than they actually will be because we produce natural shale gas. Now, we discussed how the environment can have negative effects, or that shale gas production can have negative effects on our environment. It can also be beneficial for our environment. Shale gas is cleaner than any other fossil fuels, especially oil and coal. To put this in perspective, We can analyze a claim by a published Nature article stating that the greenhouse gas emissions from power plants could be reduced by 50% if we replaced coal with natural gas. So, what are my thoughts on fracking? I believe fracking offers a cheap, clean method of domestic energy supply for the United States. However, I believe we need to continue researching the effects of this process to improve the safety of the production and to understand the long-term effects it's going to have on our society and our world. And ultimately, I believe we need to seek a safe and sustainable energy source. I thank you for your time. I hope this talk has been able to show you some of the risks and benefits of fracking and to allow you to help make your own determination on this issue. Thank you and have a great day.